Life is a cascade of choices, isn't it? From the moment you wake, your day becomes a series of small decisions: what to wear, what to say, what to ignore. Yet among all those choices, most of us never make the only one that truly matters: the decision to be ourselves. Not the version your parents rehearsed, not the character your culture sold you. Banditune, not even the image you think the world will approve. Just the unedited you. It sounds simple, but it isn't. Because the moment you truly make that choice, everything around you begins to change. Not because you've done something grand, but because you've stopped doing something ordinary. You stop acting. You stop performing. You stop carrying the heavy mask called approval. Tell me, when was the last time you asked yourself honestly, whose life am I living? Mine or theirs? That unseen audience in your head, the one that scores, judges, and whispers, "Try harder," has been running the show for years. You call it discipline, responsibility, success. But beneath it all is fear. The fear of being misunderstood. The fear of standing alone in your own truth. So, what happens if you stop? What happens when you finally decide that the only person worth satisfying is the one behind your eyes? That's where this story begins, the quiet revolution of choosing yourself. We're taught early that being loved means being agreeable. We learn to adjust our tone, trim our edges, hide our strangeness just enough to stay accepted. Bit by bit, the real self folds into smaller and smaller shapes until it fits the expectations of others. And we call this growing up. No one explains that most of the roles we play were written by people who never really knew us. Parents, teachers, strangers on glowing screens, each with a picture of how a good life should look. We inherit their blueprints like sacred maps, convinced that following them will lead to peace. But those maps were never drawn for your terrain. They lead everywhere except home. You can feel it in your body. Every decision that bends you away from truth tightens somewhere: the throat, the stomach, the spine. And still you keep performing, smiling when you want silence, helping when you are empty, agreeing when every cell wants to say no. It's exhausting, isn't it? The constant balancing act of being liked. Look closely at that inner voice that never rests, the one that says, "Do better, be nicer, don't disappoint." Whose voice is that? Most likely, it isn't yours. It's an echo of all the people who trained you to behave, who mistook obedience for kindness. They meant well, but their lessons built a cage of courtesy. You've been wearing that cage like a second skin. It's the outfit you put on every morning before stepping into the world, polished, presentable, and suffocating. No wonder you're tired. Trying to fit a borrowed design drains life faster than any real struggle. Think of it this way. Imagine forcing yourself into clothes 2 sizes too small. At first, you laugh it off, adjust the seams, hold your breath. But by midday, you can't breathe. By evening, you forget what comfort feels like. That's what living by others' expectations does to the soul. You keep smiling at the mirror, telling yourself the fabric will loosen. It never does. And yet, we celebrate this discomfort. We call it discipline. We call it success. We call it normal. Entire industries feed on your fear of stepping out without the armor of approval. Chaputwain. They promise belonging at the price of becoming invisible. The tragedy is that you comply willingly. Satihurdu, you curate your words, your posture, your reflection, all to earn nods from invisible judges. And when the applause comes, a like, a compliment, a brief recognition, you mistake it for love. But love built on performance is a transaction, not a meeting of souls. Somewhere beneath all that pretending, the real you still whispers, Sometimes it's a sudden irritation, a daydream, a quiet ache that says, "This isn't me." You drown it in noise, work, scrolling, small talk, but it keeps returning. It's not trying to ruin your life. It's trying to return you to it. Choosing yourself begins long before courage arrives. It starts with noticing the lie you tell every day, that if you keep everyone comfortable, you'll be safe. But safety built on self-erasure is slow death. You survive, yes, but only as a shadow of what you could be. Look around. You'll see millions walking with that same quiet heaviness, pretending their masks are faces. They laugh at the right jokes, attend the right gatherings, post the right captions, and still feel hollow. Not because life is cruel, but because they traded authenticity for approval. And approval never satisfies. It's like drinking salt water. The more you swallow, the thirstier you become. At some point, maybe today, maybe years from now, you'll feel it. The tension between who you are and who you perform. You'll realize that every yes you never meant was a small betrayal. Every "I'm fine," another burial of truth. And then something inside you will start to crack. Not out of anger, but relief. Because cracks are how light enters. When you glimpse that light, don't run. It's the beginning of freedom. Freedom doesn't arrive with trumpets or applause. It arrives as a sigh. The body exhales after decades of pretending. You realize the war was never with the world. It was with the mask you thought was necessary. Something subtle shifts. You stop apologizing for breathing differently. You begin to wonder what life might feel like if you stopped shrinking to fit. And though fear protests loudly, "What will they think?" a deeper voice answers quietly, "Maybe it's time they find out who I really am." That quiet sentence, whispered in your own heart, is the first act of rebellion worth making. The world may not clap for it, but your soul will. There comes a moment, quiet and almost invisible, when pretending becomes heavier than the fear of being seen. It doesn't happen with thunder. It happens in stillness. You find yourself staring at a wall, a sky, a stranger's eyes, and something in you whispers, "I can't do this anymore." That whisper is not weakness. It is the soul remembering its own voice. Imagine your life as a play you've performed for so long that you forgot it was a role. The lines come automatically. The applause still lands, but somewhere behind the curtain, a deeper self begins to stir. It starts by asking inconvenient questions. What if I stop? What if I let the mask fall? Fear rushes in at once. Because without the mask, who are you? A blank page, a wild animal, an untamed wave. You've built entire relationships, careers, and identities around that performance. If you drop it, won't everything collapse? That's what the mind screams, but truth speaks softer. It says collapse is not destruction. Collapse is revelation. Close your eyes and imagine this. You are a single wave convinced it must stand taller than the rest. You rise, you crash, you reform, always striving not to disappear. But one day the exhaustion is too much, and you look beneath your own movement, and there it is. The ocean, endless, quiet. Still, you realize you were never separate. You were the ocean playing at being a wave. That realization changes everything. The chase loses meaning. You no longer seek perfection or applause because you see that nothing real is ever lost. When you fall, the ocean remains. When you rise again, it's the same water taking a new shape. Freedom doesn't come from holding your form. It comes from remembering what you're made of. Awakening strips away illusions, faster than the heart can keep up. You start seeing where you once clung. You notice conversations that feel hollow, ambitions that no longer taste right, people who only loved your performance. And with each awareness, the old world trembles a little more. It can feel like death, because, in a way, it is. The death of the identity that survived by pleasing and apologizing. Most people turn back here. They feel the emptiness between the old self and the new, and call it loneliness. But it's not loneliness. It's space. Space to breathe, to feel, to rebuild, without pretending. You stand there trembling, naked in your own honesty, and discover it isn't an abyss beneath you. It's open air. Yes, fear will visit. It will list every risk like a lawyer arguing for your captivity. What if you fail? What if they leave? What if you lose everything? But hasn't that same fear been your warden all along? It promised safety while feeding you boredom, offered acceptance while stealing your aliveness. Now, for the first time, you see the bars were made of thoughts. When you choose yourself, fear doesn't vanish. It just loses authority. It still knocks, but it no longer enters uninvited. You start living not as a defender of identity, but as a participant in existence. The smallest things, wind on your face, laughter without performance, silence without guilt, begin to feel miraculous. You start to notice how life keeps moving without your control. The sun rises whether or not you worry. The ocean breathes whether or not you plan. The world has been free all along. You were the one rehearsing captivity. And then, something beautiful happens. You stop needing certainty. You stop needing everyone to understand. Prada Prethindu, you realize that peace was never waiting at the finish line of control. It was standing quietly at the beginning, asking to be noticed. You start living from presence instead of pressure. Action still happens. Work, love, loss, repair. But it flows like music instead of machinery. Pain still visits, but it doesn't own you. Failure still stings, but it doesn't define you. You feel everything more vividly because you're finally here for it. Even fear begins to look sacred, the trembling proof that something new is being born. You begin to laugh softly at the old chase. All the years spent collecting approval suddenly seem like children stacking sandcastles before the tide. You don't resent them. You understand them. That confusion was necessary. Without the prison, you'd never taste the sky. You no longer seek to fix yourself, only to meet yourself. You stop trying to become and start allowing yourself to be. That movement, from effort to ease, changes everything. The world won't clap for it. It rarely applauds quiet revolutions. People who built comfort in your compliance might call you reckless or strange. Let them. Their reactions are just echoes of the mask you've outgrown. They don't see the ocean yet. Maybe one day they will. Until then, your task is simple. Stay awake. Notice when you slip back into performance, when the costume calls your name. Smile at it. Don't fight. Don't flee. Just see it for what it is. Awareness itself dissolves the lie. This is awakening, not a fireworks display, but a sunrise. Slow, certain, unstoppable. It doesn't make you special. It makes you real. And realness, once felt, can never be forgotten. You can close your eyes again, but you'll always sense the light behind the lids. The curtain has fallen. The role is over. The actor is finally at rest. Now the story begins. When the storm of awakening passes, what's left is not fireworks. It's clarity. A stillness so ordinary, it feels revolutionary. You begin to notice that life hasn't changed much on the surface. The same streets, the same routines, the same people. And yet everything feels different. Because you're finally in it, instead of performing it. The world you once tried to control starts to move on its own rhythm. You work, you speak, you rest, but without the invisible weight of pretending. This is where freedom becomes practical, not an idea, but a pulse. It hums quietly through every action, every breath. At first it feels unfamiliar. Peace always does. You've spent so many years mistaking tension for purpose that calm seems suspicious. The body doesn't trust rest yet. It expects another crisis, another performance. But slowly, something deeper takes over, a rhythm beneath thought, guiding you like a tide. You discover that effort is not the same as engagement. You can act without strain, care without depletion, love without losing yourself. Relationships begin to change, not through confrontation, but through energy. People who only recognized your mask start to drift away, as naturally as leaves falling from a tree that no longer needs them for shade. You don't chase. You don't explain. The distance simply happens. And in that space, new kinds of people arrive, quieter souls who speak the same unhurried language, who meet you without needing you to disappear first. Some relationships evolve. They bend instead of breaking. Those who truly saw your heart adjust their pace and meet you there. They see that what changed in you wasn't love. It was how you carry it. You no longer give to prove worth. You give because giving feels natural again. Like breathing. The body begins to exhale years of tension. The shoulders drop. The jaw unclenches. The stomach softens. Your body, that silent witness to every compromise, finally feels safe in your own presence. Sleep deepens, pain lessens, not because life became easy, but because resistance ended. It's as though the nervous system finally gets the message. We're home now. And then you stop trying to heal. You realize healing was never a project, only a process of remembering what was never broken. You start living from the middle of yourself, steady, unhurried, whole. Decisions become simpler, not because you know more, but because you need less. Work begins to transform too. The things that once felt draining lose their grip because they no longer define you. You create and contribute from overflow, not obligation. There's a new kind of efficiency that comes with authenticity, not rushed, but effortless. Even failure changes meaning. It stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like direction. Point. Every wrong turn becomes proof that life is steering you back to truth. Grief becomes a teacher. Joy becomes permission. And beneath it all, awareness hums quietly, untouched by mood or circumstance. You can feel pain without becoming pain. You can feel joy without clinging to it. You realize you are the sky, and every storm passes through you, not over you. When you stop fighting yourself, you stop fighting life. You stop fixing people. You let things breathe, and that letting go brings everything closer. Love deepens. Friendships soften. Even silence feels warm. When you no longer need from others what you once begged for, they start offering it freely. You're no longer asking life to validate you. You're meeting life as an equal. Peace no longer depends on conditions. It lives quietly inside the chest, constant as heartbeat. It's not fragile. It doesn't vanish when things go wrong. It's simply there, like gravity, unseen but unwavering. You still make mistakes. You still get scared. But fear doesn't dictate the story anymore. You watch it come and go like a passing cloud, noticed but no longer obeyed. This is what real power feels like. Not control, but composure. And from this composure, a new joy arises, quiet, radiant, contagious. You laugh easily again, not because life became perfect, but because perfection stopped mattering. The world hasn't changed. Your relationship to it has. Everything you were seeking was never hiding from you. It was hiding in you, waiting for permission to exist. Integration is not the end of awakening. It's the beginning of living. You walk through the same doors, meet the same people, eat the same meals, but now everything feels alive. Because you are. So here you are, standing at the quiet edge of your own becoming. You've seen how pretending collapses, how peace replaces performance, how truth reshapes the bones of your life. Now only one question remains. Will you choose it? Will you choose yourself when it costs approval? When silence replaces applause? When comfort gives way to honesty? Because that's the real threshold, not a mountain to climb, but a single step into what's always been yours.